I love dice and I love randomness. So like the elements of just like, well, I'm going to grab dice and I'm going to make something happen randomly. I've got a way to do it. So I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
I'm Nerdarchy Dave.
Welcome
to
to
Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. All right, today we're going to be talking about randomness in your D&D game. You can use it in other RPGs as well. And, you know, why random?
Well, random is one of those things that, you know, the chaos, the unpredictability, it really makes a big difference on the course of the game. But there's also, you know, charts and things that can allow you, if you don't want to make the decision, you can just be like, all right, I'm going to let the dice decide, which is an absolute element of tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, I mean, you can use random charts and, you know, other things as inspiration, or you can just let them do the work for you, the heavy lifting. You could even randomly generate the adventure and the dungeon as you're actually playing. You can randomly generate weather, NPCs. There's so many different things and so many different play aids out there that people can access if they just kind of want to, you know, I always want to say put your brain on autopilot, but that's not it either, because you make the random roll and then you have to determine what those rolls mean, what comes up, you know, what does the fork in the road, you know, where does it go? What's going to be on the other side? How are you going to describe it? How are you going to lay out the story as you go? So in some ways it's a little bit harder than prepping everything and pre-planning everything. But that being said, you could also randomly generate everything beforehand and have it ready to go. And you could do it several ways. You could go, hey, you know, player X, roll this die, you know, and have all the players roll different dice, and just give you the numbers that have been generated, and they've generated the adventure and you have it done beforehand. Or you could do it as you play, which I've seen happen many times as well.
You know, the doing it at the start of play is how our friend, you know, Brian Colin of Creature Curation, creator of Vast Grim, you know, that's the way he has generated his Morkborg and Vast Grim adventures in the games that I've played. So before we actually get going, we all roll these dice, we figure out all of these components, and then the adventure starts. So like the players literally have a hand rolling dice in the design of what we're actually playing that evening.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, like he did a Game Found crowdfunding thing for a dungeon crawl that was for Morkborg, and we played in that, and that's literally like going room to room. You're just rolling as you go.
Indeed. Not everybody is fond of random things and random rolls. You know, what you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There's a couple different areas where I think people kind of have a hang up with the idea of doing everything randomly and letting the kind of dice decide how things go. One is, I'm the DM and I'm going to create this elaborate story that I'm going to allow my players to partake in and add to, right? So, you know, they want that narrative control and they want to narratively be able to lay everything out and then have the players interact with everything, which part of that gets taken away if you kind of do it all random. You know, there may not even be an overarching story. You may even just be doing a dungeon crawl that, you know, they've discovered, or you have to come up with everything on the fly. So that's one of the issues.
You know, now if you're of that ilk that you don't want to surrender control, the avenue of still using randomness in preparatory can still be done. I know my friend and, you know, former member of the channel, you know, Nathan Nerdarchy, you know, he ran his very first 5th edition campaign years ago by using the DMG and going through all of the processes to create who is the villain of the campaign and like what are all of the attributes. So like coming up with all of that in advance allowed him to be like, oh, well, I'm going to create this story. And, you know, the major factors were chosen for him by just some random rolls of the dice.
Yeah, and also like the idea of using the randomness and random rolls to help generate what's going on, I think facilitates the idea for those that believe the stories would actually happens at the table. That's what we're making. Like the story isn't there before the players begin engaging with things where, one style GMing is definitely to like, no, I'm creating this, the overarching story, the plots, everything is kind of laid out. So yeah, there could be some friction there. Also, I've also heard that some people think it breaks immersion, right? Like we're like real serious, hardcore role players, and we're immersed in the story and what's going on at the table, and the GM's like, roll a d12 when you're like, I want to go through the door, right? And so, the idea that it breaks immersion, and there are different ways to enjoy the game. There's different. Some people, don't do any role playing. Believe it or not, they just like to, it's almost like a simulation of a dungeon crawl, and they like doing that. Other people are very invested in the story, and they will never go in a dungeon. And both are very valid.
I 100% agree. Now, if you feel that the rolling random dice breaks immersion, we have DM screens for a reason. You can get a padded rolling tray, and you can be able to drop a die behind the screen as a DM, and your players might not have a clue that you're doing this kind of stuff in advance, or if that might still be too loud, mute your laptop and use a dice roller that is not going to make any sound whatsoever. They don't know if you're looking at notes, changing tabs, or what.
Well, I feel like part of it is not just that. It's like the sound of dice is breaking the immersion. It's roll a d12, and then it's like, oh, let me look at that. I need this chart here that goes there, like that kind of thing. I think is more of the issue now. That could very well be a case of just being like, you pre-generate all the numbers beforehand, and you kind of know, and you've had the players do it, right? So like you kind of like round robin, and then like when they go do the thing, like you just you've already had it planned out.
Sure, and however you want to do it, there's a way to bring the random rolls, the random decisions, the randomness factor of RPGs into your prep and into your planning.
So I guess like we've talked about like randomly generating some things, and we've called them out, but like the GM guide alone has tons of things that you can randomize.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, you can straight up go into creating your random villain. You can go into creating a random dungeon, and all of the different iterations between maps and traps and treasure. Like just about everything can be randomized in the DMG. And if you can't find it there are other ways, other sources that you can go to get other randomness.
Yeah, so even just like going to the DMG, you got NPC villains in Chapter 3.
You've got encounter tables in Chapter 4.
Chapter 5 has a dungeon creator.
And then you got treasure and magic items in Chapter 7.
Then there's a Appendix A that you just has a random dungeon generator. Like you just go through the whole process. So this is very much embedded in the game itself. Also, it harkens way back to original D&D. There was always lots of charts, and this stuff has been ported into 5e. And then if you look at the old school Renaissance OSR movement, they are all about this. I feel like they use this stuff a lot. As we mentioned, our friend who made the Vastgrim game and Adventures for Morkborg does everything random in the beginning. His whole adventure is there's 4 different plots that take you through this huge dungeon crawl, and everything is randomly generated.
But are there other ways that we might be able to randomly generate things for our RPGs?
There might be. I mean, you've got this set of dice from Dungeon Morph. Inkwell, I believe, is the name of the company that actually, the dice have basically dungeons on them. You just roll them and put them together, and then boom, all of a sudden, you've got a dungeon.
So Dungeon Morph Dice, the sponsor of this particular video, our dice and cards remind many long-term gamers of the classic Dungeon Morph booklets and RPG maps. Many cartographers and illustrators carry forward the spirit of these designs by creating new interconnectable 10x10 grid geomorph fragments for anyone to use. The designs follow a format created by Dyson Logos, which include 2 connecting points on each side, so you can turn maps any of 4 ways and connect them to any other map. So for this campaign, what's new? There's 3 new dice sets. You got Sewers, Crypts, and Lairs. These sets start at 6 dice each, but could grow as much as 7, 8, or 9 dice each at no extra cost. A matching set of 2.5 by 2.5 old school blue style cards that initially is a 54 dry erasable cards. A matching Dungeon Morph font. Install it, and each character you type in a word processor in a 10x10 Dungeon Morph will initially have 108 designs, but could grow to 162. There's a 100+ page black and white booklet and PDF, which details with each design known as the Dungeon Morph Delving, and a 10x10 battle map tiles matching the new designs. It will also initially have the 54 dry erase cards, but could grow to 81. These will also have a matching PDF instead of JPEGs for easy virtual tabletop use. Note the new tiles set covers the designs from all 3 new sets of dice.
Now, we're going to put a link down in the description as well as one of the cards up here so you can check it out. If you want to add more randomness, or maybe you just collect dice and you want all kinds of different dice. Now, they didn't actually send us these. You own these.
Yeah,
you purchased these from Amazon or something.
I honestly don't know whether I had backed a previous Kickstarter or just bought them online. But I have a box literally of random dice, that's random to generate different things for if I ever want to do something random in a game. I've got dice to choose weather and create adventures, create traps, create hazards. Heck, I've even got one that has like the 7 different deadly sins and the 7 virtues on it. Alignment dice, class dice, it doesn't matter. I love dice and I love randomness. So like the elements of just like, well, I'm going to grab dice and I'm going to make something happen randomly. I've got a way to do it. So adding these kinds of things are definitely something that I'm into. So I'm definitely going to be looking at this Kickstarter as well to be like, all right, can I get some more dice? Now the set that I have, they are D6s. And while they do have the geomorph designs on them, they are actually usable as just a basic D6 because there is a number on each side, labeling 1 through 6. So you can use them as is. And, the adventurers might not know if you're rolling a d6 for something else or if you're generating a map right there. So can have a lot of fun with it.
I was like, I thought the numbers is like, that's how you're supposed to connect them in order, But no, it's so cool. And that leads us right into the next talking point is there are tons of analog random generators. I mean, literally the books, right? The DMG is just that. But there's so many more that you can get. And I know you've bought a bunch of them over the years. I've bought a bunch of them over the years.
I know I have a series of, book of random tables.
Yeah, he's got the book of random tables. There's dice. There's decks.
Yeah, so there are books that are out there. There are, decks out there. I know I've got a handful of things, from a variety of sources that allow you to either, randomly generate a dungeon or randomly pull out treasure, randomly pull out NPCs. There's crit decks.
Yeah, I mean, we actually just made our own deck, right? Mage Forge, which you could randomly draw cards from if you need magic items. Nord Games, they have critical hit, critical miss decks. They have random encounters on their decks. So there's a tons of different ones. Our friend Brian Colin has Cardography, which is literally decks with dungeon rooms, different environments on them, where you can lay them out, and create a dungeon that way. And as we mentioned, Brian Colin even has his Workboard adventure on GameFound that was successfully funded. That is a randomly generated adventure in itself, and I'm sure it is not the only adventure out there where you randomly generate the adventure as you go. So, there's tons of analog ways of doing this, but that's not our only option.
You absolutely can go in the process of digital and go and look at the different websites and things that are out there. I know Dave and I have a number of resources that we use on a regular basis because it makes campaign prep or campaign running so much easier.
Yeah, I'll try and, I will put the links to those resources down in the description below so you can check them out and access them. And they're all free too, right? You've got Donjon, which has random everything. I use that all the time for cool, especially for treasure, because I'm terrible at generating treasure, but I go over there, click a couple buttons, and it comes up with stuff. But not only does it come up with stuff, it also will come up with like interesting things like there's a bag of dust, a pouch of dust, gray dust, right? Does it do anything? I don't know. What will the players do with it? Let's find out. Is it worth anything? Probably not. Also, there is another website called the 5e Magic Shop, and it just literally generates magic item shops complete with magic items and stuff randomly that you can go over and do.
There's Chartopia, which is another website that actually goes and generates charts. So if you're looking for random roll charts, this could be a great place to kind of get into and help develop the different things that you're looking for your game. And a big downside, that I have is coming up with names. The fantasy name generator has just about every kind of name that you could be looking for. I use that just about every time I'm writing or running a story. Be like, all right, they're going to encounter somebody new. All right, I'm going to go over to this website. What's the closest thing? All right, goblin names, no. Fey names, okay, great. Let's go with that one. Do I want male? Do I want female? And I'll just click until I come up with a name that I like, or just pull out the syllables that I like and assemble the name that way. It's absolutely a fantastic, set of, resource that highly recommend.
Yeah, I actually do that a lot of times in my own games as I just generate a bunch of names, write them down as NPC names, and they may not even be attached to any NPCs per se, but I'm like, if I need something, I'll do this. Or like, it's a halfling village, I'll pull up 10 halfling names and just have them ready to go for the adventurers. So to check out. But what do you think? What do you use in your games? Random, yay or nay? Let us know in the comments below. While you're on your way down there, keep going and go check out that Kickstarter link.
And don't randomly decide. Go ahead and click that like, click that subscribe button. Go ahead and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
Quick reminder, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we drop new videos here on the channel, so come on back. But you can't wait till then. No worries, we got you covered. We actually have a video where we talk about randomized beholders. I believe that one even links to an article, or is based off an article, using Chartopia, where we randomly create beholders from it, which was a ton of fun. Link will be in the card up here.
So until next time, stay nerdy.